Hello, everybody. This is Mike Serban, your Market Center Tech Trainer for the Go Network, and I just wanted to put together a kind of a quick little training here for some recent fraud developments. And this is coming to you from your tech person because there is definitely an element of cybersecurity involved. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a shout out to Charles Newber. I really appreciate the big help on all the content here. So, without further ado, let's talk about what we can do to just be the best agents in the industry. And I think the way we do that is communicating well, but of course understanding what's going on. Real estate transactions, they're complex. They involve large sums of money. That means that they are prime targets for criminals, right? In fact, the FBI reports that losses from real estate wire fraud alone back in about 2022 was over $500 million, and I'm sure it's just growing from that figure now, right? Because what are we doing? We're becoming more digital, and as things become more digital, there becomes more ways for criminals to exploit that. Okay, so let's talk about what we're seeing right now and what we can do about it. Well, first off is going to be wire fraud. This is the big one, y'all. This is the one that you don't hear advertised on radio programs and TV. I hear things about home title lock and things like that all the time. And we'll get into that in a minute. But what we're seeing here on the ground is wire fraud, right? And essentially, wire fraud is when criminals hack into somebody's email. And that can be your email. It could be a title company's email, a lawyer. It could be the other agent. Heck, it could be the client, any of the clients. And once that happens, they sit back and watch what other emails come through that account. And then at the right time, they will send fake wiring instructions that appear completely legitimate, that'll cause buyers to send their down payment, closing costs. I mean, it can be lots of money. In fact, and this is, I can tell you, because I got the phone call on this one. We had a buyer on one of our listings that lost over $600,000 to wire fraud. And it's really simple and easy for it to happen. And I'm going to show you an example here in just a minute, so that you can see, because we actually have a success story, right? So let's talk about some tactics that they use, some red flags. We kind of said before, these fraudsters are going to send an email generally to your buyer that claim either that the wiring instructions have changed, or something is a little bit different, or they've confirmed something, and they know how to time it at the exact right time. They make the emails look legitimate. They'll copy logos, and they'll even create a similar but fake email address that matches either your title company or your agent. Now, once they get the money, once the wire has been initiated, these people are sophisticated enough that they can quickly route that money through multiple banks, and then it goes offshore. They will start transferring across several domestic accounts. Then it goes into an international bank where you're never going to see it again, right? They'll go to a bank that's somewhere that doesn't play nice with the United States. And funds generally are completely untraceable within that 24-hour window. And honestly, it could even be faster than that. They'll usually create some sense of urgency, like, hey, we're going to give you a discount. Or they'll say something like, if you want to get your keys at closing, we need your funds 3 days in advance. Things like that. So anytime, let's talk about the warning signs, right? Tell your clients to look for any type of last minute instruction changes, any type of pressure to wire anything quickly or immediately, or any slight variations in things like email addresses, or the grammar or the formatting, and of course anything that says, "Hey, don't tell anybody don't tell anybody else about this." That's a big red flag. But even knowing all that, it's still pretty easy to fall victim. So here we go. I want to first thank Ray Bobo in the Arlington office. He is the agent whose client this happened to. And so today is May the 12th, 2026. This happened last Friday. You're looking at an email over here on the right that is exactly, this was sent to Ray when they started finding out what was going on. This is an actual email that was received. And as you can see right here, they've used a legitimate looking email address for Ray. They've got it as Ray, but Ray's address is not ray.bobo@realtyagent.com. Okay? And that was a big tip off. But I just want you to see this is the right address of the property. Here they are talking about, impersonating Ray. I just spoke with the escrow officer. This regarding the email below, and I was informed that their account department demands that the cash to close funds needs to be wired as early as tomorrow morning to avoid delay towards closing and disbursement of funds on the day of closing. See attached closing statement and wiring instructions, which, by the way, were sent as attachments to this. Let me know once the wires transfer is done. The amount to wire is $889,000 and some change. Now, if you know Ray is not going to speak like this. Ray is much more professional. But here they are purporting to impersonate Ray, forwarding something he got about it. Right? And what's even crazier is the HUD that was attached actually has the real general file number on it, right? This really looked convincing. In fact, this is the actual attachment. And let's take a look at what's wrong with this, right? So obviously the title company's logo, it's a little taller than it should be. But you know what? I know sometimes when I open up anything in an email on my iPhone, sometimes it will stretch logos like that. So I gotta say, I don't even know that I would be tipped off by that. Now look at how the fonts are all mismatched throughout this entire document, especially down here, right? I just don't think a real title company is going to use 5 different fonts and all these different sizes. And of course, there's some grammar mistakes, right? Under wire instructions, why would they say, please find below wiring instructions? But this is what really tipped off the consumer. They saw this, Grasshopper Bank National Association in New York. And this is when she said, wait a second, this is in Texas. Why am I wiring money to a bank in New York? This is the moment that she stopped and called Ray. And called Ray out on the carpet. Hey, why would I be doing this to New York? And of course, poor Ray wasn't, he wasn't included in any of this communication. So this was the first time he heard of it. And, only because Ray talks about wire fraud were they able to stop. I'm a big believer in that. So I just want you to see how easy this is. Think, if you didn't do this for a living, if you didn't see wiring instructions, if you didn't communicate with title companies, on a frequent basis, would you fall victim to this? And I got to be honest, as smart as I think I am, I could totally see myself falling for this. So what can we do about wire fraud? Okay, well, always use that wire fraud warning. Obviously, that's part of our compliance checklist. But you know what? There's nothing wrong with handing that to your buyer or to your seller, because this could get sellers too, right? The receipt of their proceeds after closing. So always use that and talk about it. Verify before you wire. Never trust email wiring instructions, and you've got to tell your people. Always call the title company directly and use a phone number that's not on that email, right? One that you've given to them. Or better yet, if they get wiring instructions, just tell them to call you, and then you're going to give them the phone number that you know is going to go straight to that escrow agent. Don't email documents, and I know I'm going to get pushback on this one, but I need you to hear me out. You should assume that all email accounts have been compromised. Email is not and has never been secure, okay? So you might be innocently sending an executed contract to the lender or to the title company or to the agent on the other side, maybe to your transaction coordinator, but you don't know who's watching that email. And when they see that contract come through, now they know the dates, they know the amounts, they know exactly when to ask for wiring, to send wiring instructions and ask for money. We are loading their gun. So instead, use that Lone Wolf account. Use Dotloop if that's what you use. If you use DocuSign, use one of those platforms to send documents securely. It is worth the headache. And if you have to explain to the agent on the other side that you're doing it because you don't want their client or your client or any clients to fall victim to wire fraud, I hope that they will understand. This right here will make us all better agents. Okay, educate your clients. You must proactively warn your clients about the serious risks of wire fraud, because this is just something that's happened. I can tell you, I just personally, this was back in 2020, so a long time ago now. I had a buyer who almost wired $140,000 to a thief, but I had had probably 5 separate conversations with her about the dangers of wire fraud. So when she got the the wiring instructions in her email, she stopped and she called me and said, "Hey, Mike, I got the wiring instructions. What do I do?" So I said, "Okay, what you do is you call this number to the title company." And would you believe this? She calls me back 10 minutes later going, "Mike, the title company has not sent me wiring instructions. That was fraud." And it was real easy to fall for it. So there you go. Listen, if there's any suspicion of fraud, first thing, call everybody. But I want you to know that you can always contact the Dallas FBI office. This is their phone number, 559-5000. And they're open 24/7. All right, let's talk about seller fraud. So this is another one. This we do hear a little bit about every once in a while. Like the home title lock people, for example. This is kind of what they're talking about, right? The way this works is that the fraudsters are going to impersonate a legitimate property owner. Again, they've hacked into their email accounts, so they know the information to talk about. This all starts with email hacking. Then what they do is they pose as the owner to list and sell properties that they don't even own. It's usually going to be vacant land, or it's going to be properties with absentee owners, or both, right? Because when there's not a bunch of people stomping around on the property, it's easy to quote unquote sell it and not get caught. So a major red flag is when these people can't meet with you in person, or they say they're on vacation or they're out of the country and they can't do video calls. They're going to do everything that they can to avoid face-to-face contact, because that will prevent identity verification. And listen, now that we have AI in our life, right? AI technology is now enabling increasingly realistic voice and video impersonations. It is scary, y'all. And we're going to talk on the next slide about a $2 million loss. This is one that this comes from our friend Charles. Charles says he's heard of this one, where an agent receives a call. "Hi, Bob, this is so-and-so, and Tim gave me your name," or whatever, "and I have some land to sell. I want to sell quickly, so let's offer the property." at an eye-catching price. I would really like a cash buyer with a quick closing date, and I need the money to send to my daughter because she was just diagnosed with cancer and she does not have enough medical insurance. Boy, that bothers me on so many levels. So 46 days later, this transaction closes, and then 2 years after that, this poor buyer had spent a lot of money clearing the land and they were about to get started building their dream home when all of a sudden the actual owner shows up and goes, "What in the world are you guys doing?" This buyer spent $2 million on this piece of land, and the rightful owner sued them for the destruction of the land, right? Because land with a bunch of beautiful trees on it is different than what they wound up with. Had to remove what had been built of the structure. They got damages, they got attorney's fees, and could you just imagine, right? That is a huge, huge loss. So seller fraud, right? These people are able to, you can actually go buy fake notary stamps online, and that way you can make a document that's been forged, it can appear legitimate, right? Then they are going to be hard to distinguish from authentic ones. I mean, it's a stamp, right? Very low tech. But remember, these people will always try to avoid in-person contact, right? If you're going to meet with the seller, look at the seller in the eyes at the very least. Okay? So how do we prevent seller fraud? Well, first off, if a deal seems too good to be true, yeah, it probably is, right? And this is especially the case when there's pressure or like an unreasonably low price. And again, maintain vigilance if it is unimproved land or if it's an absentee owner, right? Those are huge red flags for seller fraud. And remember that we can use Forewarn. We all have the Forewarn app. Whoops. We all have the Forewarn app as a benefit with our local realtor associations, and that will run criminal background checks on people. Okay, this is great to use. Verify via snail mail. Yeah, send a thank you letter to whatever address is on the tax roll. Go ahead and send it with a return receipt requested. Therefore, you know that the actual seller is getting something, and you have, at the very least, established that you did what you could to verify that the person is the rightful seller. And don't forget, last but not least, you can always Facebook stalk people, right? Check social media. Verify their employment claims. You know, there's so much. Don't hesitate to creep on them to verify their identity is legitimate, because you just might save somebody a couple $1 million. Okay, buyer fraud. Yep, here we go. Fake buyers now contact agents claiming to be out of state or overseas, and just like before, they can't meet in person, and they want to rely on remote communication to establish the transaction. I know I hear this a lot lately, especially when you take a new listing. You get that unrepresented buyer. They email you saying, "Hey, my wife and I saw your property," and they'll even give you some details about it. "I really like the layout on the back porch. I think the pool's beautiful, blah, blah, blah. Can we just meet with you on a Zoom so we can see whether or not this is a fit?" And then what they do is they send you a Zoom link. They don't want to use your Zoom account. That's the red flag. They want you to use their Zoom account. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. If you're going to meet with somebody you don't know over Zoom, make doggone sure it's your account, because any link that you click could be an invitation to download spyware, malware, God knows what onto your computer. Okay? And just like before with the seller fraud, you've got the same types of warning signs. They're going to look for FaceTime tours or Zoom conferences, right? They're going to be in a hurry to close, and the deal just feels too good to be true. And what happens is they'll deliver the earnest money after they get under contract. They'll deliver the option fees. They won't do any inspections. But then they place a lis pendens lien demanding payment to release it to the real seller. Okay? And these people are targeting what they perceive as vulnerable sellers, especially elderly homeowners that don't have agents. Man. So here we go. What do? What are their tactics? Well, they create that urgent. They don't want inspections. Another big red flag, right? They're trying to get past all the contingencies and the normal things. Okay? And what they do is they file these liens and then they demand payment. They basically hold that person hostage. So again, what can you do to prevent? Well, like before, research and verify. Make sure that the property details, right, that they are consistent with what you're going to see in the market, right? If a deal seems too good to be true, yeah, most likely it is. And you can always make sure that cross reference your property records. You can look at your ownership history, but at the end of the day, you got to rely on your spider sense. Forewarn again on your potential buyer. Yeah, when you start seeing buyers that have bankruptcies or frauds and fraud convictions, things like that, yeah, that's a red flag. I love the idea of the confirmation letter. You know what? Send a thank you letter to that buyer. Geez, it was so nice to meet you. I'm so happy that you're blah, 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 blah. But do it with return receipt requested. And that way you will know that somebody actually exists at that address that they provided. And then, of course, cybersecurity hygiene. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. Make sure you're running some types of antivirus software, though I do have some separate thoughts on that. Keep your systems updated, especially Windows users. Avoid public Wi-Fi networks. If you're going to use public Wi-Fi, you should use a VPN. That stands for a virtual private network. Okay, and what that will do is that will, similar to what the fraudsters do when they make off with your wired funds, is it bounces your digital identity around a bunch of servers such that it can't really be tracked anymore. Or you could also, if you don't have a VPN, because VPNs do typically have a very low monthly fee, but if you don't have a VPN, you can use your phone as a, what am I trying to say here? You can mirror on your phone, let your phone become your hotspot. That's what I was searching for, your hotspot. Just make sure your phone's not connected to the private network or to the public network, right? Make sure you're using your 5G. Okay, let's talk about password security, right? So I love this graphic here. And while I'm talking about this, I'm going to urge that you all take a look at, just based on characters and how complex your password is, look how easy it is for hackers that have some sophistication, right, that are actually using computer power. Look how fast they can get your password, right? It is crazy. And that's just using brute force, right? Let's talk about if they're not using brute force. We put everything that hackers ever need to know about us out there on our socials. If you give me a few minutes, 5 minutes on your Facebook or on your Instagram, and we're going to know what's your spouse's name, what are your pets' names and your kids' names, what are their birthdays, what's your birthday, what are your anniversary, who's about to graduate, what's your favorite kind of car, right? Something tells me most of us are using some of that in our passwords. And if that's you, you are an easy mark. So with passwords, here's what you should know. Make sure you're changing them. I know it's a pain in the butt. I know it, and I know nobody wants to do it. But it's the one thing you can do to up your security game. Okay? Use a password manager. You can do that too. Okay, some resources specifically with wire fraud. Don't forget the TAR 2517 form. That's the wire fraud warning form. It's essential that needs to be provided to every client from day one. And you know what? It's okay to talk about fraud with your clients and your family and your friends for that matter. Please look at the bottom of the screen. Here's an email signature clause that I hope you will all put in your email signature. And I'll just tell you, I copied and pasted this directly from my email signature. And I recently increased the font size on this because it's that important. If you want to turn it red, bold, whatever, but it's gotten so big now. And think about what would happen. People could lose their life savings. You could lose your deal, which pales in comparison to someone losing $900,000. Could you just imagine? Social media alerts. Thanks again to Charles on this one, right? So, there are some scams that are, or some known buyers out there that are putting strange offers out there, and that's what this person up here is talking about. Here's also an example of a person who has a bankruptcy on their record in Forewarn. That's what your Forewarn's going to show you, right? So take a look at those resources. They are really, really good. So just to summarize, protect your documents and your data. Make sure your passwords are hard to guess. Make sure you're using special characters, mixed case letters, numbers. Always send documents to others using a secure method. Email is not secure. Confirm seller and, frankly, buyer identity. Forewarn is great for that. Send those thank you letters to the tax roll addresses. Use the return receipt requested at the post office for that. Research those buyers, right? Maintain your cybersecurity like we've talked about. By the way, if you're interested in knowing, Proton, Proton, is my preferred VPN of choice. Happy to talk to you more about that. And then lastly, educate your clients proactively. That is the best thing you can do. Informed clients are going to be your and their best defense. The more you talk about it, the more vigilant they're going to be. And I just want to say this over and over. I just don't think it's good enough anymore just to say, here, sign this form. Or here, let me docu-sign you an entire stack of forms, because do you really think people are reading it? Right? Even if they are, we've got to talk about it. Here are some emergency contacts. This is what we want you to do with fraud response. Obviously, call the Dallas FBI office. The FBI is who investigates wire fraud. And their phone number is right here. If you suspect fraudulent wire transfer, time is absolutely critical. If you catch it fast enough, meaning seconds, the bank may be able to help. But every minute that goes by makes it less and less likely that they will be able to help. Make sure you have transaction details ready. Obviously, this is probably not for you, a call for you to make, but as much as your buyer, your seller, whoever's affected by it. But if it does happen, you should notify everybody. Notify title. Notify all real estate agents. And I would just say probably brokers too. Local law enforcement. It's okay to call 911 on this. Now, they may tell you, call the FBI, we can't help you. But it doesn't hurt to call. You can even call the Texas Attorney General's office. And then, of course, any documentation that you have, right? Report that to ic3.gov. That's the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. And encourage your clients to report even attempted fraud. This is going to help protect others, and it will aid in investigations. Okay? Obviously, this is not a very good venue for questions, but just thank you for your attention and your vigilance and your commitment to just helping with fraud and just being the better agent out there. I do want to let you know that if you have any more questions or if you'd like any more resources, every office has an office supervisor. Sometimes that's the team leader. Sometimes that's people like me or Janice Moore. right? So there's somebody under each roof that can help you with things like this. Obviously, your broker is in your corner as well. The Go Network Hub has resources out there. And listen, please tune into the broker chat every Thursday. All right. So again, thanks. Thanks again to Charles Newber for your massive contribution to this. I really appreciate it. And folks, stay safe, stay informed, protect your clients, and just be the best agents you can be. Have a great one.